The auctioneer's hammer fell like a death knell, and Zelda Lawrence watched 23 years of her father's sweat and dreams sold to strangers for less than the cost of good breeding stock. She stood at the back of the crowd, gathered outside the Triple L Ranch gates, her calico dress dusty from the long ride into town and back, her dark hair pulled tight in a bun that matched the rigid set of her shoulders. The May sun beat down on Las Animas, Colorado, with the kind of relentless heat that made men mean and women desperate, and Zelda felt both burning in her chest as the last of her father's cattle were driven away by their new owner. Her father had built the Triple L from nothing, arriving in Las Animas in 1861 with a wagon, a dream, and enough stubbornness to tame the wild Colorado plains. Thomas Lawrence had survived droughts, Indian raids, cattle rustlers, and the Civil War that barely touched this corner of the West. What he couldn't survive was the winter of 1883, when pneumonia took him in his sleep and left his 21-year-old daughter with a ranch, 2,000 head of cattle, and a loan from the Colorado Stockman's Bank that she didn't know existed until the banker came calling. Zelda had tried everything. She'd sold her mother's jewelry, the good china, even the piano that had come all the way from St. Louis. She'd worked the ranch with the 3 remaining ranch hands, branding cattle until her arms ached and her hands bled through her gloves. But the bank wanted $5,000, and the interest kept climbing faster than she could earn. When she couldn't make the payment in April, they'd foreclosed. Just like that, 23 years of her father's life vanished into the pockets of Eastern investors who'd never seen a Colorado sunset or smelled sage after rain. Now, it was the 3rd week of May 1884, and Zelda had exactly $47 to her name, a rented room above the general store, and a fury that burned hotter than the afternoon sun. She turned away from the auction before anyone could see the tears threatening to spill down her cheeks. Lawrence women didn't cry in public. Her father had taught her that, along with how to rope a steer, read a ledger, and shoot straight. The main street of Las Animas was busy with afternoon traffic. Wagons creaked past, kicking up dust that coated everything in a fine brown powder. Cowboys from the surrounding ranches lounged outside the saloon, their spurs jingling as they shifted their weight. Zelda kept her head high as she walked past them, ignoring the stares and whispers that followed her everywhere now. Poor Zelda Lawrence, they said, lost everything. What's a woman going to do alone out here? She pushed open the door to Morrison's general store, the bell jingling overhead. Albert Morrison looked up from behind the counter, his round face creasing with sympathy that made Zelda's stomach turn. She didn't want sympathy. She wanted her ranch back. "Miss Lawrence," he said softly, "I'm so sorry about today. Your father was a good man, best rancher in the county." "Thank you, Mr. Morrison." Zelda's voice was steady, controlled. "I'm here to settle my account for the room." Morrison waved his hand dismissively. "Now, there's no rush on that. You take your time getting back on your feet. I pay my debts." Zelda counted out $15 onto the counter, money she'd earned taking in laundry and mending from the other townswomen. "That covers this month and next. I'll have work soon." She hoped that was true. The only jobs available for women in Las Animas were teaching, which required certification she didn't have, working in the saloon, which she wouldn't consider, or taking in more washing and sewing. None of it would earn enough to ever buy back the Triple L, but at least she could eat. The door jingled again, and Zelda turned to see a tall cowboy duck through the entrance, removing his worn Stetson as he came inside. She'd seen him around town a few times over the past month, always working on something, always moving with the kind of quiet purpose that spoke of a man who didn't waste time. He had dark hair that curled slightly at his collar, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and eyes the color of creek water in summer, that peculiar mix of blue and green that seemed to change with the light. "Afternoon, Barrett," Morrison said, his voice considerably more cheerful. "Got that lumber you ordered in yesterday. Should be enough to finish that barn." "Much obliged, Mr. Morrison." The cowboy's voice was deep and rough, like it hadn't been used much for talking. He had a slight Texas drawl that marked him as coming from somewhere south. "I'll send my boys around to pick it up tomorrow." "Barrett." Zelda filed the name away without thinking about why. She started to move past him toward the stairs that led to her room, but Morrison called out to her. "Miss Lawrence, you met Barrett Riker yet?" "He bought the old Henderson place about 2 months back. Been fixing it up real nice." Zelda paused, her manners warring with her desire to be alone. Manners won barely. "Mr. Riker." She nodded stiffly. Barrett Riker studied her with those changeable eyes, and Zelda had the uncomfortable feeling he saw more than she wanted him to. "Miss Lawrence, I knew your father, though we only spoke a few times before he passed. He gave me good advice on water rights when I first arrived." "I'm sorry for your loss." Something in the simple sincerity of his words cracked the wall Zelda had built around her grief. She swallowed hard. "Thank you." He was generous with advice to newcomers. He believed a strong community made strong ranchers. He was right about that. Barrett turned his hat in his hands, a nervous gesture that seemed at odds with his confident bearing. "I heard about the auction today. That's a hard thing, losing a legacy like that." Zelda's spine stiffened. "Life is hard out here, Mr. Riker. I'm sure you know that." "I do." He paused, seeming to wrestle with something. "If you're looking for work, I could use help at my place. I've got 100 head of cattle now and plans to expand. I need someone who knows ranching to help me run things proper. Someone who can keep books, manage hands, make smart decisions about breeding and grazing." The offer hung in the air between them like a rope thrown to a drowning woman. Zelda's pride wanted to refuse immediately. She'd owned her own ranch, managed her own operation. The idea of working for someone else, especially on land that wasn't the Triple L, felt like betrayal. But $47 wouldn't last forever, and neither would Morrison's patience with her rent. "What's the pay?" she asked, hating how her voice sounded small. $60 a month, plus meals. You'd keep your room here in town, I'm guessing, until I can build a proper foreman's house. The Henderson place only has the main house right now, and that wouldn't be appropriate. $60 a month was more than fair. It was generous, actually, for a ranch the size he was describing. Zelda's suspicious nature kicked in immediately. "Why would you pay that much for a foreman when you could get a man for 40? Barrett's mouth quirked in something that might have been a smile if it had reached his eyes. "Because you're Thomas Lawrence's daughter. You know more about ranching in this valley than most men who have been here their whole lives. And because I'm not hiring you to do manual labor. I'm hiring you to make my ranch profitable. That's worth $60 a month to me." It made sense. It was logical, practical, and exactly the kind of business decision her father would have made. Zelda still didn't trust it entirely, but she also didn't have better options. "I'd want to review your books first," she said. "See what your current operation looks like. And I'd need to know your goals for expansion." "Fair enough. Can you come out tomorrow? The Henderson place about 5 miles south on the Creek Road. You can't miss it. There's a new gate with the BR brand." Zelda nodded once sharp. "I'll be there at 8. "Looking forward to it, Miss Lawrence." Barrett settled his hat back on his head, tipped it to her, and headed to the counter to finish his business with Morrison. Zelda climbed the stairs to her small room, her mind already working through the implications of the offer. $60 a month meant she could save 40 or 45 after expenses. At that rate, it would take her years to save enough to even consider buying back the Triple L, assuming it ever came up for sale again. The new owner, a banker from Denver named Carlisle, apparently planned to hire a manager and run it as an investment property. She sat on the narrow bed and pulled out the small leather journal where she'd been keeping her accounts since her father died. The numbers didn't lie. Even with this job, buying back the Triple L seemed impossible. The bank had sold it for $8,000, well below its true value. She'd need at least that much to buy it back, probably more if Carlisle improved it. But impossible had never stopped a Lawrence before. Zelda opened the journal to a fresh page and began making plans. If she worked for Barrett Riker, learned everything she could about making a ranch profitable, saved every penny she could, and maybe found additional ways to earn money, she might be able to do it. It would take time. Years, probably. But time was something she had, and determination was something she'd inherited from her father, along with his dark eyes and stubborn chin. She fell asleep that night with numbers dancing through her head, and the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, she could claw her way back to the life that had been stolen from her. The ride out to the BR ranch the next morning was both familiar and strange. Zelda knew every inch of this country, had ridden it since she was old enough to sit a horse. But seeing it from the perspective of someone looking for work, rather than someone who owned the land beneath her horses, hooves changed everything. The rolling plains stretched endlessly under a sky so blue it hurt to look at, dotted with sage and the occasional cottonwood marking a creek or spring. The mountains rose to the west, still capped with snow that would feed the streams through summer. The Henderson place had been abandoned for 3 years after old Henry Henderson died and his children back east didn't want it. Zelda had always thought it had good bones, though. A nice piece of land with reliable water and decent grazing. As she rode through the new gate with the BR brand burned into the crossbar, she could see Barrett Riker thought the same thing. The main house had been repaired, its roof patched and its windows replaced. A new barn was half-built, its frame standing tall against the morning sky. Corrals spread out behind it, well-constructed and sturdy. It was clear Riker had money and wasn't afraid to invest it. That was good. Zelda had no interest in working for a man who'd let a place run down through cheapness or laziness. Barrett emerged from the barn as she dismounted, wiping his hands on his pants. He wore work clothes today, sturdy denim and a chambray shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and tanned from sun. He moved like a man comfortable in his body, economical and sure. "Morning, Miss Lawrence. Glad you came." He gestured toward the house. "Coffee's hot if you want some while we talk." The inside of the house surprised her. It was clean and well organized, furnished simply but comfortably. Books lined a shelf near the fireplace. Actual books, not just mail-order catalogs and almanacs. A desk sat by the window, covered with papers and ledgers. This was a man who did his own bookwork, which spoke well of him. Barrett poured coffee into 2 tin cups and handed her one. "I'll be straight with you, Miss Lawrence. I'm from Texas originally. Worked ranches down there since I was 12 years old. Saved every penny I earned for 15 years to buy my own place. When I heard Henderson's land was available, I came up here to look at it. Colorado's got water Texas doesn't have and land that's not all claimed yet. This felt like the right place to put down roots." "Why ranching?" Zelda asked, settling into a chair at the kitchen table. "With 15 years of savings, you could have done anything. Ranching's all I know. All I ever wanted to know." He sat across from her, his big hands wrapped around his coffee cup. "My father was a ranch hand in Texas. Never owned anything in his life, died working another man's cattle. I promised myself I'd do better, that I'd build something that was mine. Zelda understood that bone-deep need. It was the same thing that had driven her father west, the same thing that burned in her chest when she thought about the Triple L. What are your goals for this place? Barrett pulled over a ledger and opened it. Right now, I've got 100 head of cattle, mixed breeds. I want to upgrade the stock, bring in better breeding bulls, build the herd to 500 within 3 years. I've got water rights to the creek, and there's good summer grazing in the hills. I need to build a foreman's house, finish the barn, and put up another line shack before winter. I've got 3 hands working for me now, all good men but young. They need direction. He pushed the ledger toward her. Zelda scanned the entries, her practiced eye taking in income, expenses, and profit margins. His handwriting was clear and his math was accurate. More than that, his approach was smart. He wasn't overextending himself, wasn't taking foolish risks. This was the work of a man who understood that ranching was a long game, not a quick profit. Your expenses are high for building materials, she observed. I'm building to last. Cheap lumber and green wood will just mean rebuilding in 5 years. I'd rather spend more now and have it done right. Zelda nodded approvingly. What do you know about winter feeding in Colorado? Not as much as I should. Texas winters aren't like what you get here. No, they're not. Zelda traced her finger down a column of numbers. You'll need to put up more hay than you're planning. A bad winter can last from October to April up here. Cattle need supplemental feeding or they'll lose too much weight. You'll also need better windbreaks. I noticed your corrals are exposed. You'll want to plant trees on the north side or build shelters. Barrett leaned back in his chair, studying her. See, that's exactly why I need you. I can work cattle and manage men, but I don't know this country yet. You do. I do, Zelda agreed. She closed the ledger and met his eyes directly. I'll take the job, Mr. Riker, but I have conditions. Let's hear them. First, I want $65 a month, not 60. I'm worth it and you know it. Second, I want a percentage, 2% of profits after expenses. If I'm going to make this ranch successful, I want a stake in that success. Third, I need Sunday afternoons off, no exceptions. I have personal business to attend to. Barrett didn't answer immediately. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at his land. Zelda held her breath. She'd pushed hard, maybe too hard, but she needed this job to be more than just wages. She needed it to be a path back to the Triple L. Finally, Barrett turned. 65 a month and 2% of profits, but I want your word that you'll stay at least 2 years. I can't have you leaving once I'm dependent on your knowledge. 2 years. It was longer than Zelda had hoped to commit, but it was fair. She stood and extended her hand. You have my word. His hand engulfed hers, rough with calluses and warm. The handshake lingered a moment longer than necessary, and Zelda felt something unexpected flutter in her stomach. She pulled her hand back quickly, annoyed at herself. When can you start? Barrett asked. Monday. I'll need tomorrow to settle things in town and prepare. Fair enough. I'll see you Monday morning, Miss Lawrence, and thank you. I know this isn't easy for you. Zelda met his gaze steadily. Nothing worth doing ever is, Mr. Riker. She rode back to town with a strange mix of relief and restlessness churning inside her. She had work now, good work that would let her save money. But working on someone else's ranch, even a good ranch with a fair owner, felt like wearing clothes that didn't quite fit. The Triple L was 5 miles north of town. She could see its boundaries from the main road, could see her father's cattle, now Carlisle's cattle, grazing on her father's land. Every time she passed it, the loss cut fresh. Sunday afternoon, Zelda rode out to the Triple L. She stayed on the road, not trespassing, just looking. The house where she'd grown up stood solid and familiar, its whitewashed walls gleaming in the sun. Her mother had died when Zelda was 10, and after that it had been just her and her father. He'd taught her everything: how to keep books, how to judge cattle quality, how to read weather and water and the 100 small signs that meant the difference between profit and loss. The new manager, a thin man named Barrett from Denver, had already made changes. She could see new fencing going up, painted white instead of the practical split rail her father had preferred. It was pretty but impractical. Pretty didn't hold up to Colorado winters. "I'll buy it back, Papa," she whispered to the wind. "I don't know how yet, but I will, I promise." The wind carried her words away across the prairie, and Zelda turned her horse back toward town. Monday morning arrived cold and clear, the kind of spring morning that promised summer's heat, but delivered winter's bite before noon. Zelda arrived at the BR Ranch at 8 sharp, dressed in practical riding clothes and ready to work. Barrett was already up, had been for hours by the look of things. He'd set up a small office space in one corner of the barn for her, with a desk, a chair, and good light from a window he'd cut into the wall. "Thought you'd want your own space for the bookwork," he explained, "but you're welcome to use the house too if you prefer. This is fine. Better, actually. Keeps work and living separate." Zelda approved of the setup. It was thoughtful without being presumptuous. The 3 ranch hands, boys really, were named James, Peter, and Frank. They were all under 20, full of energy and enthusiasm but short on experience. They looked at Zelda with undisguised curiosity and, she suspected, some skepticism. A woman foreman was unusual, especially one barely older than they were. Barrett gathered them all in the barn. "Miss Lawrence is my new foreman. What she says goes, same as if I said it. She knows this country and she knows cattle. You listen to her, you learn from her, and you treat her with respect. Anyone has a problem with that can collect his pay and ride out now." The boys glanced at each other, but no one moved. Zelda appreciated Barrett's directness. It set the tone clearly. "All right then," she said, stepping forward. "Let's talk about what needs doing." The first weeks were busy, a blur of early mornings and late nights as Zelda assessed the ranch's needs and began implementing changes. She rode the property with Barrett, learning every creek and gully, every good grazing area and potential problem spot. He was a quick learner, attentive and thoughtful, asking good questions and remembering her answers. Working with him was surprisingly easy. He didn't bristle at her suggestions or feel the need to prove his authority. When she pointed out that his planned location for the new line shack was too exposed to winter winds, he moved it without argument. When she suggested buying breeding stock from the Hawkins Ranch rather than the cheaper cattle from the sale yard, he trusted her judgment. The boys warmed up to her too. Once they realized she knew what she was talking about and wasn't afraid to work alongside them. She could rope as well as they could, ride better than 2 of them, and shoot straighter than all 3. More importantly, she taught them things: how to doctor sick cattle, how to read brands, how to judge the quality of grazing land. Money from her wages went into a tin box she kept hidden under her bed at Morrison's. Every dollar brought her closer to her goal, even if that goal still seemed impossibly distant. She learned to stop thinking about the enormity of what she needed and focus instead on what she could control. This day's work, this week's savings, this month's progress. Barrett paid her at the end of her first month, counting out 65 silver dollars into her hand along with an additional $3 representing her share of profits. It wasn't much, but it was real. Proof that this arrangement could work. "You've made a difference here already," he said as she tucked the money into her saddlebag. "The boys work harder, the operation runs smoother. I made the right choice hiring you." "The ranch has good bones," Zelda replied, deflecting the compliment. "You just needed someone to help you see its potential." "Maybe." Barrett leaned against the barn door, his arms crossed. "But I'm starting to think you could make any ranch successful. You've got a gift for it." Zelda felt heat rise in her cheeks and turned away, pretending to adjust her saddle. She didn't know how to handle compliments from him. From anyone, really, but especially from him. Somewhere over the past month, Barrett Riker had stopped being just her employer and had become something else. Not quite a friend, because their relationship was still professional, but not just a boss either. She found herself noticing things about him that had nothing to do with work. The way his eyes crinkled when something amused him. The patience he showed with the younger hands when they made mistakes. The careful way he handled animals, firm but gentle. The fact that he read books at night, often the same books she'd read, so they could discuss them over morning coffee. It was dangerous territory, these feelings. Zelda had no time for romance, no room in her life for anything that might distract her from her goal. The Triple L came first. It had to. Summer arrived in earnest, bringing long days of hard work. They moved the cattle to higher grazing, built fences, put up hay for winter. Barrett brought in 2 new breeding bulls, expensive Hereford stock that would improve his herd. Zelda helped him negotiate the price, using her knowledge of the regional market to get a fair deal. The ranch began to feel alive in a way it hadn't when she first arrived. It had purpose now, direction. Barrett's vision was becoming reality, and Zelda was proud of her role in that, even as a small part of her resented helping someone else build what she'd lost. On a Sunday afternoon in late June, Zelda rode out to the Triple L as had become her habit. From the road, she could see men working on the property, making improvements. Carlyle was putting money into the place, which was good for the land but made Zelda's heart ache. Every improvement raised the value, made it harder to buy back. She was so focused on watching the ranch that she didn't hear the horse approach until Barrett spoke behind her. "You come here every Sunday." Zelda turned, startled. He sat his horse easily, his hat pulled low against the sun. She hadn't heard him follow her from town. "It's a free country. I can ride where I like." "Didn't say you couldn't." He moved his horse beside hers, both of them looking at the Triple L. "Just noticed a pattern. You always come here, always stay about half an hour, then ride back." Zelda's jaw tightened. "Why are you following me?" "I'm not. I was heading to check on the Hawkins place about buying more stock and saw you on the road. Figured I'd make sure you were all right." He paused. "You're planning to buy it back, aren't you? The Triple L." There was no point in denying it. "Yes." "That's why you negotiated so hard for wages and percentage. That's why you never spend anything in town except what you have to. You're saving every penny." "My plans are my own business, Mr. Riker." "Barrett. After 3 months of working together every day, I think you can call me Barrett." He studied the ranch in the distance. "That's a $15,000 property minimum, maybe more with the improvements Carlyle is making. At the rate you're saving, it'll take you 10 years to afford it if it even comes up for sale." "I'm aware of the mathematics." Zelda's voice was cold. She didn't need him pointing out the impossibility of her dream. "I'm not trying to discourage you," Barrett said quietly. "I understand what it means, wanting to own something, having it be yours. Hell, that's why I came to Colorado. But Zelda, 10 years is a long time to live for a maybe." The use of her first name startled her. They'd maintained formality at the ranch, keeping proper distance despite working closely together. Hearing her name in his deep voice did strange things to her heartbeat. "What would you have me do instead?" "Give up. Accept that my father's legacy is gone." "No." Barrett turned to look at her fully, and the intensity in his eyes caught her off guard. "I'd have you consider that maybe there's more than one way to build a legacy. That maybe what you learned from your father wasn't just about one piece of land, but about what it takes to make something lasting. The Triple L was his life's work. It should have been mine. It was stolen from you. I know that. The bank stealing your heritage was wrong and cruel. But you're 21 years old, Zelda. You have time to build something even greater than what your father had. You have the knowledge and the skill. You just need the opportunity. She wanted to argue, but something in his words resonated with a truth she'd been avoiding. Her father had started with nothing. He'd built the Triple L from bare ground and determination. Why couldn't she do the same? Because it wouldn't be the same, a voice whispered in her head. It wouldn't be home. I appreciate your concern, she said stiffly, but my goal remains unchanged. Barrett nodded slowly. Fair enough. Just know that if you ever want to talk about other possibilities, I'm willing to listen. He touched his hat brim and rode off toward the Hawkins place, leaving Zelda alone with her thoughts and the distant view of everything she'd lost. That conversation changed something between them. Barrett started calling her Zelda when they were alone, though she remained Miss Lawrence in front of the hands. She found herself talking to him more, sharing not just about ranch work, but about her father, her childhood, the dreams she'd had before the bank took everything. He shared, too, telling her about growing up poor in Texas, about the brutal work of a ranch hand's life, about the pride he felt now owning his own place. They discovered they both loved the same books, both preferred sunrise to sunset. Both believed that a good horse and a clear conscience were worth more than gold. Zelda tried not to think about what it meant that talking to Barrett felt as natural as breathing. Tried not to notice how her heart lifted when she arrived at the ranch each morning and saw him already working. Tried not to feel disappointed on the rare days when business took him to town and she worked without him. She was failing at all of it. In August, disaster struck when one of the hands, young Peter, got kicked by a horse and broke his arm badly. Zelda rode for the doctor while Barrett set the bone as best he could. The doctor confirmed the break was bad enough that Peter would be laid up for weeks, maybe months. That left them short-handed during the busiest part of summer. Zelda and Barrett worked from dawn until well past dark, handling tasks that should have been split among 4 people. The boys, James and Frank, did their best, but there was simply too much work. One night in mid-August, Zelda was still at the ranch at 9 o'clock, working by lamplight to finish the monthly accounts. She'd sent the boys to bed an hour ago, but the books needed finishing. Her eyes burned with fatigue and her back ached from hours in the saddle followed by hours hunched over the desk. Barrett appeared in the barn doorway. You should go home. It's late. Almost done. Zelda rubbed her eyes. Just need to finish these entries. They'll keep until morning. I'd rather finish tonight. Barrett came to stand beside the desk, looking down at her work. You're going to wear yourself out. You've been here since 5 this morning. So have you. It's my ranch. And I work for you, which means your success is my responsibility too. Zelda dipped her pen in ink, determined to finish. Barrett's hand came down gently on top of hers, stilling the pen. Zelda, go home. That's not a request, that's an order from your employer. She looked up at him, ready to argue, and found his face much closer than she'd expected. In the lamplight, his eyes looked more green than blue, and she could see the shadow of exhaustion on his features. He was as tired as she was, but still thinking of her welfare. Something warm unfurled in her chest, something dangerous and thrilling and terrifying all at once. All right, she said softly. I'll finish in the morning. Barrett stepped back quickly as if he just realized how close they were standing. I'll saddle your horse. I can manage. I know you can, but let me do this anyway. They rode together partway to town where the roads diverged. The night was warm and clear. the sky so full of stars it looked like someone had spilled diamonds across black velvet. Their horses walked side by side in no hurry. "Thank you," Barrett said finally, "for everything you've done these past weeks. I couldn't have managed without you. You hired me to do a job, I'm just doing it. It's more than that, and you know it. You've put your heart into this place, treated it like it was your own. I see how hard you work, how much you care. That matters to me." Zelda's throat tightened. "The BR is a good ranch. It deserves someone who'll help it thrive." "Is that the only reason?" Barrett's voice was quiet, almost hesitant. "Because sometimes I think maybe there's another reason you've been working so hard." Her heart hammered in her chest. "What reason would that be?" "Maybe the same reason I find excuses to work near wherever you're working. Maybe the same reason I look forward to morning coffee more than I should." He pulled his horse to a stop, and Zelda did the same. "I know this is probably the worst timing in the world. You're focused on getting back the Triple L, and I'm just getting my ranch established. But Zelda, I need you to know that somewhere along the way, this stopped being just about the ranch for me." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning and possibility. Zelda's first instinct was to deny, to retreat, to protect herself and her goals. But she was so tired of being alone, of carrying everything by herself. And the truth was, it had stopped being just about work for her too. "I can't afford distractions," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "The Triple L has to come first. What if it didn't have to be a choice? What if you could have both?" "How?" "Barrett, I have 47 months of saving ahead of me minimum before I can even think about buying back my father's ranch. That's almost 4 years. You can't just wait around for 4 years hoping I might have time for something else." "Why not?" He smiled, and even in the starlight she could see the warmth in his expression. "I'm a patient man, Zelda, and you're worth waiting for." She should have argued. Should have pointed out all the reasons this was impossible, impractical, dangerous to her careful plans. Instead, she found herself asking, "What exactly are you proposing?" "Nothing yet, just honesty. I wanted you to know how I feel. What you do with that information is up to you. If you want to keep things professional, we will. If you want to pretend I never said anything, I'll do my best to oblige. But if you want to see where this might go at whatever pace works for you, I'd like that very much." Zelda's hands tightened on her reins. "I don't know how to do this. I've never had time for courting or romance. My father needed me at the ranch, and then I was trying to save the ranch, and now I'm trying to buy it back. I don't know how to be anything other than focused on work. Then we'll figure it out together. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people who enjoy each other's company, seeing where that leads." Barrett gathered his reins. "Think about it. No rush." He rode off toward his ranch, leaving Zelda alone at the crossroads in more ways than one. She continued to town in a daze, her mind spinning with possibilities she'd never let herself consider before. That night, she lay in her rented room and thought about Barrett's words. She thought about the way he looked at her, the way he made her laugh during long work days, the way he respected her knowledge and trusted her judgment. She thought about how her father had always said that the best partnerships were built on mutual respect and shared values. She thought about what it would mean to open her heart to someone when she'd spent so long keeping it locked tight around her grief and determination. By morning, she still didn't have answers. But when she arrived at the ranch and saw Barrett's face light up at the sight of her, she knew she was in trouble. The good kind, maybe, but trouble nonetheless. They fell into a new pattern over the following weeks. Work remained work, professional and focused. But after the hands went to bed, Barrett and Zelda would sit on the porch of the main house, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about his dreams for the ranch, plans that extended years into the future. She told him about her mother, memories she rarely shared with anyone. He never pushed for more than conversation, never tried to hold her hand or steal a kiss, though Zelda sometimes caught him looking at her in a way that made her breath catch. He was keeping his word, letting her set the pace, and she appreciated that more than she could say. In September, good news arrived. The BR Ranch's first major cattle sale brought in a profit of nearly $2,000 after expenses. Barrett's investment in quality breeding stock was paying off. Her 2% share was $40, a windfall that brought her total savings to just over $400. At this rate, Barrett said as he counted out her share, profits will be even better next year. Could be you'll have your stake for the Triple L sooner than you thought. Maybe. Zelda tucked the money away carefully. If Carlisle ever wants to sell and if the profits hold steady and if nothing goes wrong. That's a lot of ifs. That's ranching. Barrett leaned back in his chair, regarding her thoughtfully. Can I ask you something? Of course. If you do manage to buy back the Triple L, what then? Will you run it yourself? Zelda frowned. Of course, that's the whole point. With what money? If you spend everything buying the land, how will you stock it, operate it, pay hands? Your father had years to build up capital. You'd be starting from nothing. The question stopped her cold. In all her planning and dreaming, she'd focused so completely on acquiring the ranch that she hadn't thought past that point. Barrett was right. Buying the land was only the first step. Actually,